I'm Molly Barnes. Welcome to Art Inquiry. My guest today is Steve Hodel, who's a very interesting man in that he was a homicide detective for many years for the city of Los Angeles, and then discovered that his father was actually the murderer of the Black Dahlia, which was a case that I got very involved with when I was a kid. He's written this fabulous book, The Black Dahalia Avenger. And one of the reasons I have him with me today, I'm very lucky to have him, is because his father was very close to Man Ray. And as we go and explore this adventure today, we'll find out that Man Ray had a tremendous influence, according to Steve, on the murder victims and how particularly the Black Dahlia was cut up. Welcome, Steve.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Molly.
How did this all come about?
Well, it started in May of '99. My father died. I got a phone call from my mother-in-law saying, your father's just had a heart attack. The paramedics are here. Flew down. He died, was pronounced dead. I flew down to San Francisco, did all the things that a son has to do. And basically, we were reminiscing about his life. And June, his wife of 30 years, 40 years his junior, said, you know, I think your father would want you to have this. And she brings me this small book, hands me this album of photographs. And we're going through it. Of course, it's got pictures of loved ones, family members, my brothers. These are actually Man Ray photographs.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. Man Ray photographs of my mother and me. And then we come to a photograph of a beautiful raven-haired young lady with a flower in her hair, and I said to June, who is this? And she said, I don't know, somebody your father knew from a long time ago. So that, I knew I'd seen the photograph, and I said, why do I know this face? And basically, a few days later, I would start researching it, and Black Dahlia comes to mind. Now, why it came to mind, I can't say. There was a 1975 movie made with Lucy Arnaz and Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. called Who is the Black Dahlia? And it looks exactly like that photo. And
a number of books had actually been written, suppositions, novels.
Yeah, I hadn't read them. I didn't even know who Elizabeth Short, the victim's name, the Black Dahlia. Ultimately, I'd find out it was Elizabeth Short, but I didn't even know her name at that point. All I knew was that it was a famous whodunit from years ago, from the 40s, 1947. And I started researching it, and basically 3 blinking red lights came to me very quickly. First was the fact that my father knew Elizabeth Short, interesting in itself, but once you know the background of my father, it's not all that surprising. He was a very amazing man.
Well, he was a well-known doctor here in Los Angeles.
He was. He was the head of LA County Health Department Venereal Disease Control. So he was the VD officer for the entire county of Los Angeles. 186 IQ, genius, went to Caltech at the age of 14, had an affair with one of the faculty members' wives. She got pregnant. He was asked to leave. He went to medical school. He was a journalist for the LA Record newspaper here, rode around with LAPD homicide guys, writing these tabloid stories. Went north. He was good friends with John Huston. And
Wasn't John Huston married to your mother at one time?
She was. They double dated as teens. And basically John and Dorothy, my mother, future mother, ran off and went to the village and joined the Algonquin Club and all became part of all of that. And Dad married, or actually got together with John's ex-girlfriend, and they had a child, Duncan. My half-brother was born in '28. Dad went up to medical school, went through UCSF San Francisco, became a doctor, and then ultimately came back to LA and started his career with the health department. John and Mom got divorced, and she came back, reunited with Dad, and my older brother Michael was born in '39. I was born in '41.
I remember him from KPFK days. Well, how did this become apparent to you? Was it intuitive, or did you start finding things that actually indicated that your father had something to do with this murder?
I did. There was, of course, the fact that he knew her, which was interesting. The second blinking red light was when I started researching the case, which I knew nothing about. I discovered a surgeon did it, or someone skilled had medical knowledge of surgery.
Why would you say that?
Well, it was the reason it became one of LA's most horrific and unsolved was the fact that Elizabeth Short came out here, not an unfamiliar story, from the East to perhaps get into the film world. And she was found nude. She was surgically bisected, drained of all blood, and posed very carefully at 39th and Norton. So it's like 5 miles south of Hollywood. And a woman walking by in the morning with her child, discovers the body and calls the police. And you've got these veteran cops coming out to the scene and looking, and they're shocked and horrified because clearly there were signs of torture. She was, as I say, perfectly surgically bisected. None of the organs were involved. I mean, it was just a skilled person that did it. So that was the second blinking red light. Dad was a surgeon also. But still, I never dreamt he could be the suspect. I figured maybe he knew something about it.
Was he actually a suspect at the time? Did the police have any idea that he was involved?
They did, but we didn't know this at the time. This wouldn't come out until much later. And in fact, that wouldn't be even revealed until the book comes out, and then secret files from the DA's office were opened up, and in fact we learned that he was the prime suspect all along.
Well, was it a power thing that kept him, that he was able to avoid jail at that time, avoid a trial?
Well, it was a number of things that came together. You have to understand the politics of LA at the time.
Yeah.
Thad Brown and Bill Parker were fighting to become the next chief of police. They were trying to turn around a very corrupt department. Back in the 40s, it was a true life LA Confidential. It wasn't like it is today. And
James Ellroy, who wrote that, directed that, actually wrote a book about this murder.
He did, The Black Dahlia, which is a fictional accounting. In fact, it'll be coming out in a film next year. They're making a film, Brian De Palma. But actually, a whole bunch of reasons. There was an abortion ring involved, and large amounts of money were going throughout the department. But you have to realize half the department back then was corrupt.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just a different time. And Parker was determined to turn this around and turn us into something professional. And he did, ultimately. But Dad, just as they were about to arrest Dad, it was reinvestigated. The grand jury said, wait a minute, there's something going on here that's funny. They ordered a reinvestigation. The DA's office took over the investigation. And a guy named Lieutenant Jamison basically discovered that Dad was the prime suspect and was just about to arrest him, and Dad flees the country.
Really?
And he leaves. He leaves for 40 years. He goes to Asia. He becomes a psychiatrist. First he goes to Hawaii, becomes a psychiatrist, counsels the criminally insane. And then he gets married to a wealthy Filipina, moves on, has 4 more children in the Philippines, and remains out of the country basically 40 years with occasional trips back in secret and in and out. So basically, but it was a situation where those few that knew actually wanted to keep a lid on it, because they knew that if he talked, it would blow the lid off this town. And of course he had information not only from his VD clinic files, but basically the abortion ring, which would prevent Parker from being.
Well, could you just talk about your sister Tamar? I mean, that was she was accusing your father of rape, and there was a case, and Jerry Giesler actually got him off.
That's right. In 1949, there's a knock on we were living in this incredible Lloyd Wright house, Franklin House, on Franklin and Normandy. And there's a knock on the door, LAPD, Dr. Hodel, yes, you're under arrest for incest. And he was arrested for having sexual intercourse with his 14-year-old daughter, Tamar, my half-sister from a prior marriage. And that was in 49. So he's get me Giesler, he gets on the phone, and of course, Jerry Giesler was the criminal attorney of the day. He was kind of the Johnny Cochran of that time.
Oh, absolutely,
and
yeah.
Just, everybody, all the rich and famous had him as their attorney.
Lana Turner.
And Errol Flynn, everybody. So there's a 3-week trial, and even though there's 3 adults present in the bedroom who saw the sex acts and testified, 2 of them testified to the acts, he was basically acquitted. They painted her with this pathological liar brush. He got a dozen witnesses to say, oh, don't believe her. And here's this 14-year-old girl basically terrified of everything, and he literally got away with it. And that's when he also left the country just as they were about to arrest him. All of these things were spinning around.
Well, I understood from the book that she actually knew that he had committed the murder, that he had told her, or somebody had told her.
Well, actually, my mother actually knew, and actually was the first to tell her, and suggested she run away, and that's what kind of started the whole thing. She wasn't going to disclose.
But why didn't anybody fight or go to the police and insist on this evidence being admitted?
Well, there were those that basically did fight for it, but they were told that Jemison, this lieutenant, was going to arrest Dad, and he had all of it together, and they said, give it back to LAPD, you're off the case, close it down. But the one thing he did do was he took all of the records and he locked them away in the safe. And we would ultimately, thanks to the story itself, it would force that safe open, and a real Geraldo moment. The DA of LA County opens it up and basically turns the records over, and we find, you know, they open up the file and it says Hodel file, and out falls a picture of George Hodel. So we learn they had 146 pages of transcripts. They wired this Franklin house, the Lloyd Wright house, where we were living at the time, and then basically they've got Dad saying, well, saying to a friend there, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they can't prove it now, my secretary's dead. And lots of incriminating statements. I mean, it just goes on and on. So half of the proofs, I mean, we had a strong case, so strong in fact that Steve Kay, who's one of the head DAs of LA County, said he'd file 2 counts of murder based on my investigation against Dad were he living. And but after that, what's come after that, the paperback's come out and it's got a new chapter with all of the follow-up, where we've got actually Thad Brown, chief of detectives, saying that we know who did it. It was a doctor who lived on Franklin Avenue in Hollywood. I mean, basically everything but saying George Hodel. I can't
believe it.
And it's just been an amazing, amazing story.
Now, how did you come about writing the book? What brought you to that? And did you have help writing it?
No, I didn't have help writing it. I had a good editor, but that was it. Basically, once I got to the point where I knew the case was made, and I submitted it in secret to the DA, and Kay came back.
When was this? What year?
That was in 2001.
Okay. And
he came back and said, yeah, based on your findings, I'd file it. At that point, I decided I would go to the public and tell them the story, because it's here. You've got this amazing story. I mean, Hollywood couldn't make this one up. I mean, it's, you know, not only do you have it starting out as Hollywood's most famous unsolved, but you've got the son of the suspect grows up to become LAPD homicide detective. I mean, I spent 25 years with LAPD, 300 murder investigations in Hollywood. I mean, if I'd have been a lawyer or a doctor, I could have never figured this out. So there was almost this unseen hand moving. It's like a Greek tragedy, really, when you think about it.
Did you feel that there was a God, or that there was some force behind you, guiding you to this?
You know, basically, when I started out, I was pretty agnostic. I've never had any formal religion or anything. But I've got to tell you, after 5 years of looking at this and investigating it, I have to believe that there is something more, that there is something was guiding me. There are too many coincidences for there not to be something more. And so it's really had a profound effect on me personally, and has really started me questioning. And I got to say, I'm really at the point where I have to believe there's something more than just chaos, you know.
The other day, somebody came to appraise my art, somebody from Christie's, and she was talking about somebody that she had dated, and one of his pieces jumped off of the wall, fell off of the wall. And it again reminded me that we know so little about what is going on with us.
That's very true. I mean, take this, for example, the book itself, this little book. My father left written instructions for June to destroy it. He says, as your last act of love for me, to prove you love me, destroy this book. And she didn't.
Has she ever spoken to you since the book came out?
Just before the book came out, I called her. Of course, I did this all in secret for a number of years of in secret investigation. Then, of course, she was the first one. I said, you know, June, here's the situation. And of course, no way. She says, this can't be true. Your father was nothing but a loving, humanistic man. You know, this can't be possible. Well, it was possible, and the evidence was there, and she's never read the book. She never will. You know, that's, of course, you can understand. She loved him, and it would make her whole life a lie.
There's a picture of your dad. Was that taken by Man Ray?
That's a Man Ray photograph taken here in Hollywood in 1946. The statue is a Tibetan god, Yamantaka. And Yamantaka was this fierce, powerful god who overcame Satan. But he's also, in that photograph, he's in what they call the yab-yum position, where he's actually having sexual intercourse with his consort. And Dad is looking on in sort of a... Dad was, you know, sex was very important to Father, and it was a very much of a driving force. I don't mean to laugh, but it was very much of a driving force. Bizarre. Yeah. Here we see 2 photographs. These are actually from the album of Elizabeth Short, known to the world as the Black Dahlia. What
was her story? Where did she come from? Did she have divorced parents? What?
She was, yeah, actually her parents split when she was a young teenager. She came out at 17. In 1943 she came out, bounced around Hollywood for a while, kind of bi-coastal, went back and forth, but came out here and basically was 22 years old when she was found on the vacant lot.
Is there any evidence that she actually knew your father?
Yes, there is. The DA files that have been brought to light from the vault confirm that Lieutenant Jemison confirms that with a number of witnesses that she was actually knew father. She was at the Franklin house. There was a woman by the name of Lillian Lenorak who positively identifies her. There's several other witnesses whose names he doesn't reveal, but he has a conversation with my mother, which is all transcribed, where he says, "We know that George Hodel knew Elizabeth Short, and we want you to cooperate."
In some of the other photographs, it's just amazing how much she looks like Judith Exner, who was reputedly the conduit between John Kennedy and Giaconda. Sam Giancana?
Yeah.
They look very much alike. I mean,
Really?
absolutely beautiful, beautiful brunettes. Tell us about this.
This is a very famous photograph by Man Ray. It's a woman cut in half, bisected at the waist, arms above the head. This he calls the Minotaur, which of course was the Greek monster who was kept in the labyrinth and fed young maidens to survive, to keep him alive. This is one of Man Ray's very famous ones. This is part of the why LAPD could never figure out why she was posed in this fashion. I present it's my firm belief that my father, who worshipped and was very close friends with Man Ray, posed her to replicate Man Ray's Minotaur.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's when you superimpose her photograph from the crime scene over it, it fits exactly perfectly, and of course this is a woman. This photograph we're looking at is another Man Ray very famous photograph called The Lovers, Les Amoureux, and here we see lips basically representing two bodies from horizon to horizon. Another one of the horrific things that was done to Elizabeth's body was that surgically her mouth was extended each side of the lips to almost ear to ear.
With a knife?
With a scalpel.
Really?
And this is the second of about 7 links I make to Man Ray.
But just getting back the lips for a second, that was bought by Helena Rubinstein and was actually a very, very famous painting. And when it was resold at auction, a number of years ago, there was no resale given back to the artist who was alive, and it actually was responsible for changing the laws about resale with living artists.
Yes, well, it is clearly lips are thematic throughout. They've become a very important part. Lipstick, Dad actually, there were several other murders that he did, and he actually, lipstick is involved in that. Where he actually, yeah, it's not just the one murder. There were actually he was a serial killer. There were a number of murders that are linked to it. The DA would file 2 of them. He thought a lot of the others were very interesting, but not enough evidence.
Let's go on to the next picture.
That's just a Man Ray photograph.
Does that relate to any of the murders that your dad?
No, it's not. That's not for my book. This is one of the many Man Rays that were done. Other than the fact that she's nude and she's her hands are over her head. But
who is the model?
I don't know this photograph.
His wife Juliette Man Ray was actually a model for him and modeled for a number of people in Paris.
Juliet was a very good friend of my mother's.
Yeah.
And I met her after Man Ray's death when she came back.
Now who is this? This is Juliet, isn't it?
No, I don't. No, that's not Juliet. That's the famous glass tears photograph.
There was a show at MoCA recently. Well, a couple of years ago.
This is
an
an interesting photograph.
Now, have you ever seen that piece, The Metronome?
Yes, and that's actually Lee Miller's eye.
Yeah.
And who was a former mistress of Man Ray.
I'm showing this in my show that I'm doing in Los Angeles in August.
Oh.
A retrospective of the LA Art Association, and I'm using that the iron that has no practical use except to kill somebody.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about Man Ray.
Well, Man Ray and Dad it wasn't that, I mean, they were very close friends. He came to the Franklin house, visited on both Juliet and Man Ray.
And what was Dada?
Well, Dada he was a Dadaist.
Of course, yeah.
And basically their position was, to go against society, just don't go through life agreeing with everything. In other words, they felt, that's why he loved the Marquis de Sade so much, was he thought he was one of the freest thinkers because he opposed society. There was a lot of mixture of nihilists. There was a nihilism about them. So he basically was very much he was anti-government, everything. Just, he thought it was very cool to be, in opposition to
Tristan
society.
Tzada, I remember writing the plays, the Dada plays. It made no sense, and they were performed in Switzerland primarily in 1923.
Right. They had all of these games. Part of it was the exquisite corpse game. You remember that? Where
No, I don't.
Where somebody draws a face, and then they fold the paper, and somebody draws the shoulders, and they fold it, and you come up with these very strange.
Oh, I'd love to. I guess we don't have time to do that today.
But it was a popular game that was played by, and a lot of the surrealists loved it, and a lot of their works you'll see.
Well, a lot of them, they would do the drawing where your hand didn't leave the paper, the pencil. Never.
Automatic writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, did he have a big, I think they had dinner twice a week, your father and Man Ray. Do you think that he knew about your father's intentions?
I do. Oh, no, not intentions. I think he knew certainly after the fact. I have nothing in my investigation that shows he had any information before, but certainly afterwards.
Here's a picture. Who did that? Did Man Ray do that?
No, that's not a Man Ray. I'm not sure who took that photograph. That's a picture of Dad, probably about 1950, just about the time he fled the country. You can see quite dapper, quite handsome.
Who was that old photographer that lived in Los Angeles near the Hollyhock House?
Teskey, Edmund Teskey?
Yeah.
Yeah, Teskey was a friend. He came to the Franklin house a lot. I actually have he took a photograph of the three of us, my brothers and I.
I remember him when I was young, and I used to go over there when he'd have sales. He was doing the same thing Man Ray was, in that he was changing and altering the photograph while it was still wet. He was trying things that a lot of people like Lucas Samaras do today.
Like the rayograph.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't recall him. I vaguely recall Man Ray at the house because we were there from 45 to 50. So I was like, 5 to 9 were my years there. And Dad had a lot of interesting people. Henry Miller came to the parties. John Huston and Walter and Kenneth Rexroth. A lot of very interesting. Dad was very avant-garde. And to understand his crimes, you have to understand that he was truly absolutely a surrealist. I mean, he really believed there was no difference between the dream state and the waking state.
That's what he commented on, didn't he, when he was actually accused of raping your sister?
He was. He gives a confession as they're arresting him. This whole thing must be a dream. If it's not, if it's real, then I must, apparently I did it. I need to talk to my psychiatrist. I mean, but he really did believe. I mean, it was part of his madness.
Steve, did you have a lot of negativity surrounding? Did people review this book badly? Did they think that it was all?
It came out with great reviews. New York Times. It's been an international bestseller. It's published in France now, and it's done very well. There's been a vocal minority who have had strong opposition. Some of them have their own agendas in regards to they were writing their own books. They had their own theories to support. Others have a kind of a don't mess with my myth mentality,
Absolutely.
They want it to remain unsolved. Even to some degree, the foreword to the paperback was written by James Ellroy, who it was very appropriate. It was very poetic and a very beautiful foreword he's written, and basically says absolutely the case is solved. But at the same time, he has mixed feelings about it. It's like, I'm not. Maybe I would have preferred this not to be solved.
Right.
And Will Fowler, the son of the reporter
of Gene Fowler,
Gene Fowler, was at the crime scene, and he actually came out and said in his in a chapter in a book he wrote, he said, "I hope that Black Dahlia is never." This was before my book. That it's never solved. It's like a Christmas present that should remain unwrapped. Well, I'm sorry, but I take strong offense to that. I mean, it's if that was my daughter, but there is. I mean, I can understand. There is a mentality that says, don't ever solve this. This is part of wrapped around the psyche of Los Angeles.
Steve, what's next for you?
Unfortunately, I'm going to be stuck in this black hole. I'm writing book 2, which is a prequel, which has to do with crimes that my father committed pre-Dahalia. He was 38 when he committed that crime. He didn't wake up one morning at that age and say, I think I'll be a serial killer. So I'm looking at crimes that he committed back in the 30s.
Did your father stop killing after he married the last wife?
That's a good question. You wouldn't think he would have. I haven't done any investigation in Manila or in Asia. I suspect there are more crimes in Asia, but I haven't been out of the country and done that. You know, right now I'm looking at the past. I expect at some time there will be indications that they're going to look at him for some crimes in Asia.
We were all very frightened when the Black Dahlia murder occurred. Is there anything you would suggest to our listeners, our viewers today, how to avoid that happening to you?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a different world today in some senses. You know, we still have a lot of crime in Los Angeles, and it's a huge problem. But basically, you know, there were a lot of crimes that occurred back then, and there's no easy answer to that, really, as far as what to do to prevent it. I think people are a lot more sophisticated today. You know, you're just not going to get a woman walking at 3 in the morning by herself.
Right.
You know, so I think a lot of things in today's society are built in to protect us more.
Thank you, Steve. This has really been fun having you. I can't wait to talk to you more. It's wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Art is not for everyone. It never has been. It never will be. But for those of you who love it like we do, I want to turn you on. I'm Molly Barnes. Thanks for watching.